Disclaimer, this video will go over serious topics such as drug addiction, severe mental illness, suicidal ideation, sexual abuse, and death. So if you're sensitive to these topics, click off the video now. It will also contain spoilers for the series Mr. Robot, so if you don't want to get spoiled up until the end, you'll also want to click off.
I fell asleep amid the flowers. For a couple of hours. On a beautiful day.
Mr. Robot by Sam Esmail is a cyberpunk hacker drama that focuses on Elliot Alderson, the asocial cybersecurity engineer by day and vigilante hacker by night. As the series progresses, we get to see a wide array of plot twists, character deaths, and bombshells that completely shift the direction of the story and constantly keep viewers on their toes. However, one plot twist trumps all of them in terms of tying the entire story together, as well as arguably carrying most of the emotional weight. For anyone who's seen the show and the thumbnail, you already know what it is when I mention Season 4, Episode 7, Proxy Authentication Required. This is, spoilers, the reveal of Elliot's sexual abuse from his father, Edward Alderson. It's an absolutely gut-wrenching scene that truly makes you empathize with Elliot and feel his pain. But before getting into it, I feel like I have to explain the build-up to that scene before the reveal in order to truly embody the weight of it. Mr. Robot does a fantastic job at building up the aforementioned twist by dropping subtle hints here and there. The first obvious hint, or maybe not so obvious, is Elliot's hephibophobia, or fear of being touched. Throughout the show, Elliot has shown a strong aversion to physical contact with other people. He refuses to shake hands, gets uncomfortable and confrontational when touched, and asks people bluntly to stop touching him. While these don't necessarily confirm that he is a victim of sexual abuse, it is still a prominent hint that is a core part of Elliot's character, and a trait that is typically shared by those who have suffered physical and/or sexual abuse. Secondly is the existence of Mr. Robot himself and his dissociative identity disorder. Mr. Robot was an alter created by Elliot's mind in order to protect him from the painful nature of the world. What kind of pain would he need to experience as a child in order for his mind to shield him from it? One may argue that it was the death of Edward, his father, but that wouldn't necessarily make sense. DID, or dissociative identity disorder, is most common among those who've suffered from either physical or sexual abuse. Their alters form in order to protect them from the pain that they experience, usually as a child. Again, this isn't the case for everybody, but Elliot does fit the textbook definition for DID. His alters were formed as a means to cope with the extremely painful and traumatizing nature of his father's abuse and molestation. The protector alter, or Mr. Robot, wants to shield Elliot from the pain and acts as the father that Elliot never had. Magda, or the prosecutor, is a disciplinarian mother who represents Elliot's internalized self-hatred. The child represents the innocent victim within Elliot who has suffered alone for decades. Then finally, the mastermind, or the Elliot we follow throughout the series, represents Elliot's rage and anger towards the world's injustice, especially towards sexual predators, rapists, and pedophiles. It's why the show starts off with Elliot busting a pedophile hosting a CP website on the dark web. The mastermind wants to create a safer, better world for the host Elliot and is willing to do anything to get it, and that's why he and the Mr. Robot alter joined F Society in the first place, or rather why they started F Society. They wanted to seek vengeance on behalf of Elliot, the host, against Evil Corp for killing Elliot's dad and form a better world for the host's reemergence. I find the dynamic of these alters, especially the mastermind and Mr. Robot, to be extremely fascinating, because they're both essentially fighting for control over the host throughout the entire series. Then, the ending of the show has the mastermind, who has taken full control over Mr. Robot, deciding to finally relinquish his control and allow the host Elliot to reemerge, to allow the real Elliot to reunite with Darlene, the only person he has left and really the only thing he has to live for. It's truly a beautiful moment that is a perfect ending to this show. The third piece of evidence is his family dynamic. Magda Alderson, or Elliot's mother, was a cold, bitter, abusive person who also resented her husband for seemingly no reason. This is documented by Darlene, who mentioned that their mother hated their father and would talk shit about him all the time. Elliot also recalls her mother's callous reaction towards his father's death. Yet, in spite of the resentment and the abusive nature of Magda towards her children, she was remorseful and did feel guilty. She wanted to be loved by her children, as shown when she kept the CD and the video of Elliot, Darlene, and Angela recording a Mother's Day video for Angela's mother. It doesn't really absolve her of her abuse, but it at least humanizes her, because it shows that Magda did have a shred of humanity within her, even though she was a total monster to her own children. Yet, as sad as it is, there was an even larger monster within their family that she felt she had no control over. She felt that she couldn't stop him from his abuse. Therefore, she took out her internalized anger and hatred on mostly Darlene, but even on Elliot once Edward died. It's an incredibly tragic situation all around, but mostly for Elliot and Darlene, who had to suffer from their horrible parents' abuse. I think the most tragic part of Elliot's sexual abuse is the human aspect of Edward. This ties into a greater theme of the show, which is the duality between humanity and monstrosity, and how there are so many characters that embody this, such as Magda and Edward, and later on Fernando Vera. But let's right now focus on Edward. He was Elliot's best friend. He was a caring, loving, affectionate father who seemed to be a true role model for Elliot in every way. He was the best computer engineer at Evil Corp who taught Elliot how to code, which ultimately sparked his love for computer science and his journey down the path of hacking. Yet despite all of these great things about Edward, at the end of the day he was still the monster who haunted Elliot during his childhood. He still made the conscious choice to abuse and molest his own son, his own kin, in order to fulfill his own sexual desires and need for power and control, which is fucking sickening and depressing. Especially because the show shows the best parts of Elliot while only telling the worst. I think it's a great way to employ the mixture of showing and telling because it creates a disconnect in the viewer's mind. We see the great father figure, but deep down we are told and we know the horrible and irredeemable monster that he was. I believe that Edward's sexual abuse towards Elliot was the true catalyst for the show. It's not White Rose's machine that caused the nuclear accident, it's not Edward's death, and it's not even F Society, but it's the molestation, because the molestation was the catalyst for Elliot's dissociative identity disorder. And if he were never molested, he would never have dissociated, he would never have formed a DID, and therefore he would never have had the Mr. Robot personality that is the catalyst for everything that happens. Therefore, the show would never have existed. So while it is an incredibly tragic twist, it is a crucial twist and probably the most crucial twist of the whole show because it ties everything together. Finally, the grand reveal itself. Season 4, Episode 7, Proxy Authentication Required, is an absolutely fantastic episode. The direction, the cinematography, the soundtrack choice, everything about this episode is perfect. The decision to make the episode seem like a 5-act play whilst filming it like a movie is just perfect in my opinion. It sets up the tension, the drama, and the build-up that you know will reveal something towards the end. I mean, why else would they stylize this episode to be so vastly different than every other episode in this series? Furthermore, I think Fernando Vera is the perfect villain to unravel Elliot's deepest, darkest secret. Vera is a master manipulator who can read and break people psychologically in such a unique way that I've never really seen before in a show. He can be a cold, ruthless killer in one moment and an empathetic friend in the next, all the while seeming totally natural and within his character. It's almost like in his own psychopathic way, Vera has this desire to connect and relate to people, even if he himself is a complete monster. He's both human and monster embodied, both Jekyll and Hyde in one, merged into one consciousness. In a way, he's kind of like a dark parallel to Elliot by embodying both humanity and monstrosity in one person and portraying two psyches in one that seamlessly merge into one another. The reveal of Elliot's sexual abuse is an absolutely gut-wrenching scene, as previously mentioned. It's already tense since the build-up to this moment, as well as the style of the episode, but also the fact that Krista and Elliot are being held hostage by Vera. They are being held at gunpoint and are having their lives be threatened by Vera and his goons. Once Krista's therapy with Elliot progresses, every word pushes us closer and closer to the truth behind Elliot's past that even he cannot believe nor accept. As previously mentioned, everything in the show adds up to that moment. Magda's misery and hatred, Elliot's aversion to touching and intimate relationships, his dissociative identity disorder, and the existence of Mr. Robot being a protective father figure for him, as well as his mysterious outburst as a kid that Darlene remembers. All of these details point towards the truth, a truth that's been in our face this whole time, but we couldn't even see it until it had to be revealed to us. Once Elliot learns the truth, we see him break down in an extremely tragic manner that makes you truly connect with him and his suffering. What's also ironic, but nice to see in a way, is Elliot being proven wrong about Krista. In the beginning of the show, Elliot dismisses Krista as being bad at reading people, but we can see here that she's a great psychiatrist who truly cares about Elliot like a son. As Vera said, she's his shaman, and they need each other in order to find purpose and guidance in their own lives. Back to Elliot's pain, he embodies so much suffering that even Vera empathizes with him. Whether this is true empathy or his own psychopathic way of superficially charming Elliot, we'll never truly know. I'd like to believe it is genuine empathy, since I do like to play with the idea that Vera is a man who chose to be a monster due to his humanity and his monstrosity being two in one, rather than a pure monster just simply pretending to be a man. Regardless, right as we think Vera would manipulate Elliot into joining him as a friend, Vera is killed by Krista, the truly protective motherly figure for Elliot. It's a perfect ending to the character, as even when he shows some semblance of humanity and maybe a chance of redeeming himself, which is very low honestly, he's still killed for being the monster that he truly was. Also, it's a great way to expand Krista's character and make her more complex because it shows just how far she is willing to go to protect Elliot. Again, someone who she sees essentially like a son at this point. Their relationship goes far beyond just a psychiatrist and a patient. It is such a deep, powerful, and intimate relationship that is truly wonderful to see in the show. Overall, the rest of the series, while rushed and still deserving of its own 5th season in my opinion, is great. I love the ending, as previously mentioned, where Elliot reunites with Darlene, while the Mastermind relinquishes control and joins the other alters. I also like the conclusion of the other characters like White Rose, Mr. Robot, Darlene, Price, etc. And overall, I do believe that Mr. Robot is a genuine masterpiece. I want to make a full series analysis eventually, but I figured I'd zero in on arguably the best part of the show, that being this crucial twist towards the series' end. Goodbye, friend, and see you later.